All right, so the quest for a perfect season continues. It is week 14 of the 2024 season. It is a rematch between the Cleveland Browns, who are 3-9 on the season, but still not eliminated from the playoffs, and the 9-3 Pittsburgh Steelers, just as we all expected. So I've got Rob here from the Steel Twins. We You and I have collaborated along with your brother. We've collaborated, what now, 5 or 6 times at least?
A couple times throughout the years. I mean, like I've lost count. I'm going to be completely honest with you, but every year we try to link up at least once or twice when it comes to the Steelers and Browns. A lot of history, a lot of competitiveness, but between me and my brother and you right here, nothing but respect and always fun to be on here and conversate about the matchup coming up. So thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, sure. Um, it's funny. I was actually just in Pittsburgh a couple weeks ago for a Penguins game against San Jose, and the day we were driving back from Pittsburgh actually was the day the Steelers hosted the Ravens. So that was kind of fun. I
Well,
got
that's
to,
pretty awesome.
yeah, I got to see a little bit of Steelers Ravens like pride stuff because we were mostly out in the suburbs and we went to Eaton Park. And so there were a few Steelers jerseys, but nonetheless, Browns are trying to sweep the Steelers for the first time since 1988 going into this game because a couple weeks back, somehow, some way, you guys came into the snow globe, as I'll call it, Huntington Bank Field, and we pulled a win out of our ass, 24-19. And yeah, so I don't know what to expect with this game. I really don't.
I mean, looking back at that game, you guys were definitely the better team on that one. I would say when it came to the Steelers end of things, I felt like the coaching didn't really prepare well. Though, granted, it was a short week, but I could say the same thing about Cleveland and the weather and the field conditions. They were playing in the same environment. They were just well prepared for it, and they just had a better, like game preparation for that one, and just a better execution on that field. So I'll give the Browns props on that one. I will say when it comes to the Browns, you guys sitting at 3-9, basically at the basement of the AFC North, no offense, but when it comes to the Browns with the AFC North division, I will give the Browns this. They are extremely competitive and they do take the division to the limit. And they showcased that within the first three of their AFC North division games this year between Cincinnati. They lost that one, but they were able to pull off major upsets against Baltimore and Pittsburgh on that one. So when it comes to the Browns, I see them as a very talented team with a solid head coach in Stefanski, two-time Coach of the Year winner, I believe.
Yep.
And despite the record that they have right now, they are still a competitive team when it comes to the division. And I feel at this current state of their season, though they are somehow still alive for playoff contention, though I don't expect them to make the playoffs here. Hopefully the Steelers can kind of rain on that parade. But at this point of the season, I would say that their main goal and mission would be to play spoiler for the division. Since they have 3 games remaining, the Steelers sit atop of the AFC North. The Ravens are playing catch up, and the Bengals, they essentially have to win the rest of their games in order to make a push for the playoffs. So I would say that right now the Browns' main mission is to play spoiler. Would you agree, or do you feel differently about that?
Yeah, I would agree. And if the Steelers do in fact win against the Browns this weekend, then the Browns are eliminated from playoff contention. And in order for the Browns to make the playoffs, they would have to win out. I think I read Baltimore would have to lose out. And something would have to happen with Indianapolis and Tennessee somehow. And other things would have to go their way. So I don't see all of that happening.
Yeah, that's a lot of circumstances for the Browns to have a chance. I mean, like, it's possible, we can say that, but that's
Right.
a lot to ask for.
Right. So I gotta be realistic and say it's probably not gonna happen. But I think we can play the role of spoilers because, like, you're still fighting with Baltimore for the division. It's not a sure thing that Pittsburgh is going to win, despite, your 9-3 record. Baltimore's still right there. And we do have Kansas City next week. We could possibly trip up the Chiefs and give the Bills the edge for the number 1 seed. Like, that's not out of the realm of possibilities. Like,
No, not at all.
You saw what we did offensively on Monday night in Denver. Like, that's my biggest thing is, like, if we had gone to Jameis earlier, I don't think we're 3-9. I really don't. Like, I hate to mention this guy's name, but it's like if we had, like, benched or gotten rid of Deshaun Watson earlier and gone to Jameis Winston, I think we're having a very different conversation about the Browns.
I would probably have to agree with you on that. Since Winston has stepped in, there's no doubt that there's a different energy on that field and even off the field at that. Winston is just a far better leader, a far better, at least compared to Deshaun Watson. It may not be saying much, but Winston is just a better overall player for the Browns right now. He's playing very competitive. He's slinging the ball. He's given many people opportunities. Had the Browns made the move a lot quicker than it really should have, then this Browns team and their record may be entirely different. But when it comes to the Browns organization, from an outsider's point of view, it's just they can have all the talent in the world, and I do feel that you guys have some very, very stud players on that team.
Yeah.
Your organization just doesn't know exactly how to manage it, if you know what I mean. And it all goes back to the Watson situation.
And I think part of the problem, and this is where I give the Steelers all the credit, is the Rooneys kind of stay out of it. Like, they let Mike Tomlin do his thing as the head coach. They let your general manager do his thing in his role. Like, that's why you've only had 3 head coaches in, like, 50 years or whatever it is. That's why you guys have 6 Super Bowls. That's why Tomlin, since he's been your head coach, has never had a losing season. The Rooneys stay out of it. They allow everybody to do their job, And I think that's why the Steelers are such a stable organization. Whereas you flip over to the Browns, it feels like the Haslams want to get involved in every piece of business when it comes to the Browns. And I'm just like, no, that's not how it works. Like, that's why you see us, drafting a new quarterback or signing a new quarterback in free agency, whatever, or firing our head coach and hiring a new one. You get my point.
Of course. And I think a lot of that comes from, dating back to the late 60s when Noel first started. It's because, he was able to instill trust into the chief, Art Rooney. And then the same, applied for Dan Rooney with Bill Cowher and Coach Tomlin. And same thing applies with Art Rooney II currently. It's just a lot of trust when it comes to ownership to the head coach and even the general manager with what Kevin Colbert did in his earlier days and now Omar Khan for the Steelers respectively. It just goes to show, they have a lot of faith and trust, and it's because they know exactly how to handle business. They know how to handle a locker room. They know how to scout talent and get talent on the team to a degree, and they just know how to manage it.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And it's interesting. Like, this offseason, you went out and you trade for Justin Fields. You signed Russell Wilson, and Denver's basically paying all of that contract. So the Steelers got him essentially for free.
Mm-hmm.
And your offense was playing pretty well under Justin Fields. But Mike Tomlin's like, no, we're still making the change and going to Russell Wilson. And it seems to have worked for you guys. Would you agree with that for the most part?
Oh, I mean, without a doubt. I mean, what Fields did when he was first in there, like game by game, I felt like his play was getting a lot better. It was
Mm,
progressing well with his legs, and even within I would say the first 4 games for Fields, his arm talent was just getting better week by week until it started to show that it was slightly regressing a little bit. It wasn't exactly as on fire or as hot as it was within the first 3 to 4 weeks. And Tomlin just at the moment, that was when Russell Wilson was finally getting healthy from that calf injury. And he was I think he called himself or slated himself as like the lone wolf or something along the lines like that. He basically was the only one that wanted to see, hey, let me see what I have in this guy. I invested time, like I interviewed him and we came to this agreement. I just want to see what I got out of this veteran to see if his a high football IQ and if what he showcased in Denver last year with all that situation with Sean Payton and them. Let's see if we can really get the best out of Russell Wilson at his current age and see if he can really rejuvenate his career. And so far, so good. Russ has been a huge asset to this offense and the passing offense at that. And just last week alone against Cincinnati, just matching that energy of Cincinnati's passing attack and just slinging the ball to his targets and just connecting with guys like George Pickens and Pat Fryermuth, getting Najee involved in that, just everybody else involved in the passing attack. It just made the offense very credible, and that's exactly what I feel the offense has right now. And
yeah,
that's major props to Russell Wilson.
yeah. When I saw that you guys put up 44 last week, that kind of caught me off guard because I'm not used to the Steelers putting up those kind of numbers. At least not lately, I would say.
I mean, listen, as a Steelers fan, neither am I. I mean, it's always been about having Boz get the points or the defense having to, you know, be the part of the team that would just aid the Steelers in the victory and the offense just kind of getting by. That's kind of what me and my brother and many Steelers fans got accustomed to is just weak offense because of several years with Matt Canada and
Oh,
just
God. I'm so
yeah,
sorry.
I know. Like having to go through that was a real pain in the butt, but you
Hey,
know,
if you remember, it was the game against us last year that made you fire Matt Canada.
yes, it was, and I will say thank you for that. I would because it made the Steelers make a move that they never do. They finally pulled the trigger on getting rid of the OC, and looking what they've done this offseason with the 2 new additions at quarterback with Fields and Russ and Ethan Arthur Smith at that. They're far from perfect by any means, but without a doubt, a huge upgrade from what we had in previous years, and it showcased all season. It has showcased all season, really.
Yeah. I mean, think about this. You guys won 2 games this season without scoring a single touchdown. You beat the Falcons in week 1 by kicking, I think, 6 field goals, if I remember correctly. And you beat the Ravens a couple weeks ago just by kicking 6 field goals. It kind of does feel like this version of the Steelers is like what Russ had during his Super Bowl runs with Seattle.
I mean, essentially, if you really think about it, the defense, I would say, is far from the Legion of Boom. But I mean,
Sure.
the one thing the defense can do without a doubt is clutch out big time moments and getting sacks or strip sacks at that, and just forcing a lot of turnovers. And the past 3 games against the Ravens, against the Browns 2 weeks ago, and against the Bengals, AFC North rivals at that. They were able to garner 3 turnovers in 3 straight games, and that's a huge credibility to the defense, despite them allowing some big plays and allowing some players to just kind of shred the defense to a degree. The fact of the matter is, the defense is a bend but they don't break kind of defense. They can really edge out and get some takeaways. And
Yeah.
I mean, I understand, that philosophy of what you said, the comparisons between Russ's younger days with Seattle. I do.
Yeah. I mean, your defense definitely has some nice pieces. Of course, when you talk Pittsburgh's defense, you got to start with TJ Watt. The dude is a monster. I don't know where you guys would be without him. You got Alex Highsmith, when healthy, Casey Hayward, Minka Fitzpatrick, Joey Porter Jr. has come into his own since you guys drafted him. You got like skill all over this defense.
Yeah, without a doubt. Like we have I would consider anchor pieces with Watt for sure, Cam Hayward. Minka, he's been kind of quiet for about a year and a half right now, but I just feel he's overdue for a play. But Minka is still a credible player in my opinion.
Yeah.
JPJ, like I still think the world of him. He's kind of garnered a lot of penalties more than I would like to see from JPJ, but I feel like he can definitely work on those. I'm confident that he will. He is a Porter. He's got that bloodline, that Steeler bloodline in him. So I'm confident that he'll work his way with those issues and whatnot. But the defense is very credible still. And going up against this Browns offense here, led by Winston and Jerry Jeudy at that. I would say Jerry Jeudy has been the biggest benefit from Winston starting. I mean, he's gotten, ever since Winston stepped in for that Ravens game, I believe, 5 straight games of over 70 receiving yards and fresh off a 235 receiving game against Denver and a touchdown.
Yep. That's the thing though with Winston is like he'll have these great games, but then he'll drop back down to earth and have these bad games. So like he had, like, I would say a great game last week, 6 touchdowns, 2 of them went to Denver at that, but still. And we drove down the field towards the end and were in a position to possibly win, but then he threw the pick, and then, he threw a pick 6, which kind of sealed the deal. But nonetheless, it's like, I don't know what version of Jameis I'm going to get week to week. Am I going to get the Jekyll version, or am I going to get the Hyde version? Like, that's always been the knock on Jameis throughout his career, whether it was in Tampa or New Orleans or even here in Cleveland, is it's such a roller coaster ride with him.
And I totally understand that, and that's one of the reasons why he has been a backup for a few years now, is his inconsistencies. Like, there's no denying that arm talent that he has. I mean, he's always been a guy that just is very, very capable of slinging the football. He showcased that very much so against Tampa. It was just the constant mental errors and the turnovers that just really affected Tampa Bay, hence why they made the move to get Tom Brady and whatnot, and Baker Mayfield after Brady left. And Winston, since then, I mean, like, despite being the backup and despite his errors and whatnot, I mean, you got to have a lot of respect for Jameis Winston, for the person that he is and the leader that he still is, even as a backup, and just how he is on camera and whatnot with his, I guess, I don't want to say comedic speeches, because I get where he's going from there, but it's just, like, when he talks, it kind of makes you crackle up. Like, he is a national treasure, I would say, about Jameis Winston.
For sure.
And I mean that as a not as a player, but as a person.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's just, it's interesting because, like, you look at last year, for example, we made it to the playoffs basically in spite of Deshaun Watson. Like, it was PJ Walker that beat the San Francisco 49ers. It was DTR that beat you guys. And then we had Joe Flacco come off the streets and win the last 3 or 4 games of the season for us and got us into the playoffs. And then this season, he goes out, and who beats the Steelers in week 12? It's Jameis.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. That's why this team is so confusing for me. It doesn't feel like we're a 3-9 team, but that's what our record says we are. Like, that, you get what I mean?
No, I get what you mean, and I think it's a testament on how Deshaun Watson really is, that he hasn't really garnered as many wins in 2-3 years he's been a Brown right now, or at least starting for the Browns, compared to a PJ Walker, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Joe Flacco last year, and now Jameis Winston. Their level of play has been significantly better than Deshaun Watson. I think it's obvious that Watson for you guys is just not, that trade has not worked out.
Oh,
But
no, that trade has blown up horribly. I mean, look at how well Baker Mayfield, for the most part, has played, in Tampa Bay. Sure, he had a few stops in between, but,
right.
because he went to Carolina and then the Rams, but he's playing well in Tampa Bay, and I'm like, I get why we got rid of him. I felt like at times he was just too much of a Cleveland tough guy, is how I'll say it.
Right.
Where he should have gotten the surgery and shut it down in I think that was 2022 if I remember correctly. But he just tried to tough it out, and I was just like, no, get the surgery, come back next season, and let's see how it goes. He didn't do that, and then the Browns go, we want an adult. So you go get him?
I don't know if I consider Watson as the ideal adult to get, if you know what I mean. But, looking back at that situation, again, from an outsider's point of view, the way that they did Baker, from what he did for you guys after, a carousel of quarterbacks you guys had before him, only for him to basically be told, you're doing well, but you're not doing good enough. And then go with Watson in that situation. Looking back at it years later, it's like, yeah, it's kind of like it was definitely a mistake on the Browns' part. And seeing where Baker is right now, and just how more humbled he was from that situation. He grew as a person and a player, and that's major props to Baker and huge respect to Baker. And I'm glad he's doing well where he is right now. It's just
you
the Browns.
Almost compare Baker to Russell Wilson in that regard, because I feel like Russell has been humbled a little bit based off of how things ended in Seattle. It didn't go well in Denver, and now he's kind of put the pieces back together, for lack of better phrasing, since he's gotten to Pittsburgh.
I would say so. That whole situation with Denver, Russell just basically did what he did the best that he could with that situation with Nathaniel Hackett as his first head coach, and then Sean Payton and those. Hackett was just never head coach material. He never really knew how to lead a team or run a team. And Sean Payton, when he came in, he never wanted Russell Wilson. And it's like, if a head coach doesn't want you playing, then it's like, the relationship right there is already falling apart. And it showcased late last year when he was benched for basically no reason, but the fact that Denver had to guarantee him all this money, and they didn't want to pay him, though they guaranteed him it. But seeing where Russ was and where he is now, again, I understand the comparison that you're going with.
Yeah. Grandizer has a question for you. Prior to the 2024 season, what was your prediction for the Steelers? And now at 9-3, has that changed?
Grand. I believe I predicted, I think it was 11-6, if I can remember, before the season started. Now at 9-3, where we're at right now, I do see a win on Sunday. I'll say that. Philly's definitely going to be a challenge. I think that's a loss there. Then we have Baltimore just a few days afterward on Saturday. I think that's a win. I think we do sweep Baltimore. Kansas City, that's just a few short days afterward. That's Philly, Baltimore, and Kansas City are within a 10-day stretch for the Steelers, and that's what's really going to be difficult for them, but we got to get past Cleveland first. But I'll say this about Kansas City: they're vulnerable and they're beatable. I don't see them as a legitimate threat as I first did to start the season, or even going into the season. Especially the past two games against the Panthers and the Raiders, I feel the Chiefs are very beatable. So I do think, in considering that that game will be in Pittsburgh as well, I think the Steelers will take them to the limit. I think they will be competitive compared to the previous other games we had against Pat Mahomes. And I believe the season finale for the Steelers would be against
Cincinnati.
The Bengals. Yeah, exactly. So I would say I think the Steelers. I think they can edge out 3 more victories. I do. So in that stance, that would be a 12-5 record.
So that game on Christmas between the Chiefs and Steelers, that game's gonna be whose black magic is stronger.
Yeah, people have been making a lot of jokes and memes about that because like the Chiefs do get lucky and whatnot. I even seen like the picture from the Dark Knight Rises when Heinz Field is running over the field and then Bane makes the whole field explode and whatnot. It's just this big hole in the ground and whatever. So
Yes.
I've been seeing that run around and whatnot. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's going to be a must see game for sure. And that being on Christmas Day and on Netflix, a lot of people, even
Yeah.
on a holiday, I think they're going to tune in for sure.
Hopefully it doesn't buffer like the Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight, but let's not talk about that because that was an absolute disaster.
Yeah, underwhelming.
Yeah, Grandizer says he sees the Steelers as being a legit threat to the Buffalo Bills in the AFC. I mean, you're going to have to score to keep up with a team like Buffalo, and Pittsburgh has shown that they can score offensively, but at other times it's like the Steelers have shown that they can't even get the ball across the goal line. So, how much of a threat do you see the Steelers being?
Against Buffalo, I mean, Buffalo has surely surprised me, and I think that's a testament of Josh Allen, how he's led the team with
Sure.
basically no number one to start the year before Cooper came into town. But no, I mean, like the Bills are a very good team. They're legitimate, I would say. They've blown teams out left and right. They're very competitive. I think they're on some sort of winning streak, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't know, seeing the Steelers, what they did against Cincinnati and a shootout and matching that energy of Cincinnati and what Burrow and Chase have been doing, lighting the league up on fire, and seeing Russ in the offense kind of match that, I think they can kind of go in there with the same game plan and that same energy and take the Bills to the limit. I do feel that way. But you did mention the inconsistencies of the Steelers, having trouble getting past the 50-yard line, or when they do get past the 50-yard line, it's like their red zone efficiency is very inconsistent. Like the offense for the Steelers is far from perfect.
Right.
They still have their inconsistencies. Arthur Smith still has his inconsistencies, but
Yeah, it feels like
they
the
have their
addition.
moments.
Right. It feels like Mike Williams made that amazing catch against the Commanders, but outside of that, I feel like he hasn't really done anything since you traded for him, unless I'm missing something.
No, you're right about that, and I don't think that's really all on Mike Williams.
Sure.
I think that might be on the usage of the Steelers, and I would like to see Mike Williams more involved. But seeing what I've seen last week with players getting involved, if other players are getting opportunities and they're making plays of that, then I can't really hate on Mike Williams not seeing a lot of action as I would like to, because other players are stepping up. And if that keeps happening, then I'm not going to complain about that whatsoever.
Yeah. And I think a lot of what the Steelers need to do, not just on Sunday, but moving forward, would I say they have a running back duo the caliber of, Sonic and Knuckles in Detroit?
Yeah.
No, because it's hard to say anybody has a better running back duo than Montgomery and Gibbs.
No, for sure. They're number one, yeah.
But I really like the duo you guys have with Warren and Najee. So trying to find that balance between them, I think, is going to be a key for the Steelers moving forward.
Without a doubt. I mean, running the football is in the Steelers' DNA. It's something that they always go with when it comes to the offense. I've always preached about running the football and whatnot, but no, Najee and Warren, they're a heck of a duo. They have been over the past 2.5 years. Najee's on his way to, knock on wood if anything were to happen, but Najee's on his way to a 4th straight 1,000-yard season rushing wise, and he would actually be the first Steeler running back to ever do so. And that's a testament of what Najee's capable of doing and how just good of a talent Najee is. And him coming to a contract year, I feel Najee is just running more angry and he's just more focused than ever before. he's definitely off to his best start and arguably his best rushing season to date. And Warren is just a great compliment, just what he's able to do with his physicality and, helping block and even catch out the backfield. Just both talents are stud backs, and I'm glad to have them. And I hope we keep them for a long time, kind of like what Detroit is doing with Montgomery and Gibbs over there.
Yeah, and I feel like we're starting to develop a nice running back duo ourselves with Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford. It'll be interesting to see how Nick Chubb plays in this game specifically, because if you remember, it was in Pittsburgh last year where Chubb suffered that season-ending injury. So
Yeah, that's right. And Chubb I would say he definitely got his revenge on the Steelers, not only beating them, but being a major asset and getting that victory because he did score 2 touchdowns. And Chubb is also coming off a receiving touchdown last Monday night against Denver. So within the past 2 games, Chubb has gotten 3 touchdowns. And though Chubb isn't exactly he's not back to old form if he ever will get there because, like you mentioned, it was a very gruesome injury.
right.
But Chubb, I still consider him a threat. Nick Chubb is he's built like a tank. He just knows how to run the ball. And the Browns with Winston, they are more than capable of getting yardage and driving down the field. And if they're in that predicament, they're obviously and always going to rely on Nick Chubb to get into the end zone because that's what Chubb's best at. That's one of his best traits. And it's just a way to help the Browns score and get points on the board and whatnot. So Chubb is still a threat in my eyes. And Jerome Ford, him stepping in last year when Chubb did suffer that injury. I remember that Browns game last year, I should say, in Pittsburgh. Yeah, he kind of ran all over us to a degree. So I don't want to sleep on Ford one bit. Both backs are very good compliments for one another. Though your rushing offense wise this year isn't exactly as aggressive or isn't as good. I think you guys are bottom 5 rushing wise, but nonetheless, you guys still have a talented running back tandem over there in Cleveland. So I don't want to sleep on them one bit.
Yeah, that's why, it feels like last week was kind of an anomaly because it feels like this is going to be more of an AFC North style game, low scoring defensive battle, and then watch, it'll turn into another shootout like you had last week with Cincinnati. But everybody's going to be talking about Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, who's going to get the better of that.
Yeah.
Honestly, at times this season, I've been disappointed with Myles Garrett. I have to be honest with you. I sometimes forget he's on the field.
And that's kind of surprising. Coming from you, that's actually kind of surprising to hear, but I kind of understand that, though. He's got, 10 sacks on the season right now, double-digit sacks already. 3 of them against the Steelers. I mean, he was a major game wrecker against the Steelers against Cleveland or in Cleveland 2 weeks ago. So
yeah,
for this one, the Steelers are definitely going to have to prepare for Garrett a lot better. Their preparation for him is going to have to be top tier. But no, I mean, there's no denying his ability and just how good he is. But your feeling about Garrett this year, there's times where TJ Watt has even felt that way to a certain degree. Like the guy he hasn't really had as much of an impact in as many games as we like him to, but every now and then, knowing the talent that Garrett and Watt still possess, they're still at the end of the day, they're known for, changing the game and being game wreckers and making that big time clutch sack or big time clutch play. So when it comes to these two, there's no denying their capabilities, even if they are kind of off slow starts or not really showing up in games as much as we like them to. But, there's no denying what they can do.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at Myles' stats this season. He had 5 tackles against Pittsburgh, 3 sacks, and he actually did force a fumble, no interceptions. On the season, he has 27 solo tackles, 10 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, no interceptions. That's I feel like become the standard with him. The problem I think he deals with is we had Jadeveon Clowney, we had Zadarius Smith, but most of the time it feels like he's been on his own, and we don't really have anybody on the opposite side of him. Whereas, like, with you guys, yes, you have TJ Watt on the one side, but you have Alex Highsmith, you have Casey Hayward, who can kind of, I don't want to say offset TJ, but I can't really think of a better way to say it. You kind of get what I mean?
No, I get what you mean. I mean, Watt can do what he can on his own, but having that extra hand on the opposite side, like Alex Highsmith, is an incredible thing to have. As well as the man that stepped in for Highsmith because he's been out for a couple of weeks. Nick Herbig, the guy behind him, he's been an absolute stud. He's another Wisconsin Badger, just like Watt. Herbig, he's been a guy that Watt has kind of taken under his wing and kind of helped him in just how he is as a football player, even before he was drafted by the Steelers, and seeing him as kind of as a mini Watt to some of us Steelers fans, because like the past 3 games actually with Herbig playing, he's actually been able to force 3 fumbles, and 2 of them have been from strip sacks. So it's a testament of, just how great Herbig is and just the talent that he possesses and whatnot. So I wouldn't sleep on him. As a Browns fan for you, I wouldn't sleep on Herbig one bit because he's another compliment to TJ Watt just as much.
Oh yeah, sure. Um, like the Steelers have always been known for defense. Like whether it's been Troy Polamalu on the back end in the past, or TJ Watt now, Minka Fitzpatrick, Joey Porter, or Joey Porter Jr., just to
Yeah.
name a few. Or James Harrison. There's another one I forgot. My apologies.
Debo. Can't forget Debo.
No. And trust me, you guys have had a lot of legends go through the Steel City. Hines Ward, for example, Big Ben. I mean, for God's sakes, Big Ben, like, basically his second home was here in Cleveland. Anytime he came here, it was like, okay, the Steelers are probably going to win. So,
yeah, I mean, like that's how Ben was, like he was a man that just he was just that damn good, basically.
yeah. It's been interesting. Like, I hate to keep bringing up the whole quarterback stuff with the Steelers, but it's been interesting, like how ever since Ben retired, you've been trying to figure out who your quarterback is. Like, you thought it was Kenny Pickett. That didn't work out, so you traded him to Philadelphia. Now you go and get Justin Fields, and then you go and get Russell Wilson. It's like, this is the first time, really, I'm lumping it all together, that I've seen the Steelers kind of be in quarterback limbo, and I'm like, finally, Pittsburgh, welcome to our side of things, because, God, we've had Jake Delhomme, Colt McCoy, Seneca Wallace, Robert Griffin III, Johnny Manziel. Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, the list goes on and on. Like,
you get my point.
Of course, I do. Like, I'll tell you what, like, obviously, me and my brother Dan, we've only grown up watching Ben. We didn't know anything of Tommy Maddox or like Neil O'Donnell, guys like that. All we knew was Ben, and all we knew was like great quarterback play from Big Ben until his later years. But like, just seeing the 2 seasons of Mitchell Trubisky and Kenny Pickett, like that was more than enough of like what life was going to be like without Ben, and what they have right now, upgraded from last year to this year with Fields and Russ. Like, there is still a level of uncertainty for the future at that position. You're right about that, because both are expected to be free agents. I'm more than open to bringing back both, considering the play and the level of competitiveness and leadership that they have brought to the team on and off the field and in the locker room. I don't know if they're going to be able to manage to keep both. I would love nothing more than for both to come back, but that's an obstacle for the Steelers to look forward to come the offseason. But we still got a regular season to finish up.
Yeah, you definitely do. And like we said, you'll most likely be going into the playoffs. Us will be watching at home, but we do have recent experience in the playoffs because we were there last year and we were there just a few years ago when, well, we beat you.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah,
fun.
yeah. I'm sure.
That
It wasn't fun watching.
For Steelers fans, no.
No.
It was that was a rarity for us to get a win in Pittsburgh. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, keep in mind, there's an actual stat I wrote down here. The last time, actually, no. The last time you won a regular season game versus the Steelers in Pittsburgh was 2003. So the last time you have won was in that playoff game. And no, like, as soon as the first snap happened, I mean, it was just doom and gloom for Pittsburgh there.
Yeah. Like, Acrisure State. No, I don't care. I'm calling it Heinz Field.
Thank you, bro.
No, I don't give a crap that it's called Acrisure Stadium. I know it as Heinz Field with those giant ketchup bottles.
That's why this towel's back here, bro. That's why this towel's up in the background. Heinz Field forever.
Yes. Hey, when I went to a Browns Steelers game in Pittsburgh back in 2015, it was called Heinz Field. You guys absolutely killed us that game. Johnny Manziel was our starting quarterback. Landry Jones ended up getting injured, so Ben had to...
I remember that game, yes.
So that was
the best backup performance you could probably ever see.
So that was not fun for me. But I was not wearing brown stuff. I was wearing like a Colorado sweatshirt or something. I don't remember. I do remember going to that game. But nonetheless, Heinz Field has just been a house of horrors for the Browns. It's like the Steelers put some type of voodoo on it or something. Because I remember, we beat you on that Thursday night game a couple years ago where Myles Garrett bashed Mason Rudolph over the head with his helmet. And everybody's like, oh, the Browns might actually have an opportunity to sweep the Steelers. And then Duck Hodges beat them. Where's Duck Hodges now?
Living life, duck calling and hunting and married to a country singer right now. Good for Duck Hodges.
But that's my point, though. It's it doesn't matter if it's Landry Jones. It doesn't matter if it's Ben Roethlisberger. My guess is Mason Rudolph has beaten us a couple times in Pittsburgh while he was the Steelers' starting quarterback.
Yeah.
We've been fortunate to beat the Steelers the couple times we have here in Cleveland and the one time in Pittsburgh. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this. Lately, when it comes to the Browns, they have had the Steelers number in Cleveland. For the longest time, Ben was the owner of the Browns, like you stated. He was it was his second home in Cleveland because of how many times he won there. But no, lately, since Ben retired, you guys have had our number in Cleveland. The Steelers just haven't really found a way to get around or get over the hump of beating Cleveland in Cleveland. But, same goes for the Browns since 2003, regular season wise. Yeah, they've had trouble beating the Steelers in Pittsburgh, but, they won earlier 2 weeks ago, and now they have the opportunity to sweep the Steelers for the first time since, 88, you said?
88, yep.
So,
do I think that's going to happen? No.
I mean, the Browns sure have the motivation of not only just that, if they really want to accomplish something, but again, playing spoiler for the AFC North, considering the Steelers are first place and the Browns are on a bye week, and not the Ravens, I'm sorry. And I know the Ravens are probably going to be really desperate for the Steelers to lose at this point. So, I mean, the Browns can play spoiler.
Yeah. And as Grandizer says, the Steelers lead the series 81-64-1. I was at that game when they ended in a tie.
You were at that game.
Yes. Now we do have a question here. Grandizer, he says, what 3-player/position matchups that are we both watching closely on Sunday?
Do you want to go first with that one?
So for me, I'm thinking Jerry Jeudy against Joey Porter Jr. because my guess is since Judy has kind of emerged as our number one receiver, that's who JPJ is going to be matched up against. So it'll be interesting to see how that matchup plays out. I am going to say Nick Chubb against Minka Fitzpatrick because I think
Okay.
Fitzpatrick's going to play a little bit more down in the box to kind of slow down our run game since that is our go-to usually. So I think that'll be interesting. And then I'm going to say for the third one, I want to see how TJ Watt does against our general offensive line. Because our offensive line has been okay at times. I won't say great, but it's been good at times. So I want to see, can he exploit some of the weaknesses on it?
Right. I believe your offensive line has given up 50 sacks in total this year.
I think so. I have to double check.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken. I know early in the year you guys didn't have all your starters there, and you're still dealing with injuries on the offensive line. You just lost DeJuan Jones, your right tackle, recently, but I would say that's a matchup for sure. You know, not just TJ Watt, but the pass rush against the Browns' offensive line, because 2 weeks ago, the Steelers they only garnered 1 sack, and that was from Nick Herbig, you know, which was the strip sack he got. But no, like I felt like in that game, the pass rush wasn't really up to par as it should be with the guys that they had at the time. Now they're expected to get Alex Highsmith back for this game, so that'll be a huge plus on the Steelers' part for the defense. So I would say that the pass rush is definitely going to have to try to get to Winston and force turnovers off his part. And that's, you know, attacking the offensive line, you know, maybe do a couple of extra blitz packages, just really attack that offensive line there for sure.
Yeah, we were Denver sacked us 3 times last week, and we've given up like 6 against the Chargers, 5 against the Eagles, 7 against the Commanders, 8 against the Giants, 6 against the Cowboys.
Oof.
So yeah.
I mean, like, yeah, your offensive line, yeah, they can be vulnerable at times. So I feel like that's definitely a matchup to look forward to for the Steelers to really attack at.
Yeah.
Number 2 position or player to watch out for, I would say, I would agree, JPJ versus Jerry Jeudy. Because I remember 2 weeks ago, Jeudy, he was targeted 6 times and he caught all 6 for, I think it was 85 yards. And some of them were on those 4th down conversions to which the Browns executed all their 4th downs in that game. And that 1 third down conversion that they did get was targeted for Jeudy. And, you know, JPJ wasn't exactly on his A game for that one. And he's had a couple shaky games recently. He's definitely going to have to be on his A game. And Jeudy is just really starting to live up to that first round pedigree that Denver was hoping that they'd get from him back in Alabama. Again, Judy's been the biggest benefactor for from Jameis Winston starting. So that's definitely someone that they're going to have to try to limit, keep an eye out for. Number 3 for me, I would say, is Russell Wilson in that offense against your secondary. I feel on a consistent basis here, the Steelers are going to have to try to build off what they did against Cincinnati offensively. What they did was excellent. I would say it was the best offensive performance that they had all season against Cincinnati. And I want to see more of what we've seen from Russ in the passing offense, utilization of Najee more in the receiving game, and, you know, running the football aggressively with Najee and Warren, just being consistent, just, you know, executing in the red zone, spreading the ball around, being protective of the football, you know, just Russ in the offense going up against your defense. Because looking at your defense at the depth chart, your secondary specifically, I would say that Denzel Ward and maybe even Grant Delpit are the guys that really stand out.
Yeah.
At least to me. Everybody else is just kind of like
Mid.
they're filling a position. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like MJ Emerson, kind of just there. That's been one of my biggest issues with our defense. Is like when it comes to our secondary, I don't know who's going to be there on a weekly basis. Like Denzel Ward has injury history, Grant Delpit injury history, Greg Newsome injury history. Like Juan Thornhill, for the most part, has been reliable, I would say. MJ Emerson, he gave up like 2 touchdowns to Malik Neighbors, when which is amazing because Daniel Jones was the quarterback.
Yeah.
So that doesn't make me feel very good going against, George Pickens, which I would assume it's going to be Denzel Ward against George Pickens, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Because Jim Schwartz is still your defensive coordinator, I believe.
Correct.
If he has the proper game planning for his sake and the defense's sake, yeah, it would be smart to have Ward follow Pickens wherever he goes. But, I feel George is, I mean, his talent is just undeniable. I mean, you just see how acrobatic he is and how he is making the catches and his body control, him getting his feet in bounds, the crazy catches he does. I mean, who can forget, the one-hander he made that really left his mark on the NFL in his rookie season against Cleveland. So it's like,
Yeah.
he's definitely going to be a handful for sure.
And that's my big question to you. Like, you got Pat Fryermuth, you got George Pickens, you got your two-headed running back duo that we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
But who else do you have, like, specifically at the wide receiver position outside of George Pickens? Like, you got Mike Williams in that trade with the Jets, but other than, again, the play he made against Washington, I feel like he hasn't really done anything.
Right.
So who else do you guys have in terms of wide receivers?
I will give major props to Calvin Austin III. He's basically
I did forget about him.
He's basically been the number 2 wide receiver for the Steelers this year. I mean, seeing how much more involved he's been since Russ has stepped in at quarterback, and the plays that he's making with his deep threat ability, his speed, he's making catches. He's taken a lot of hits. As a matter of fact, the hits that he took against Cincinnati, right now he is in concussion protocol, so I don't know if his availability for Cleveland, it's definitely up in the air. I don't know if he will be available or not, but I kind of hope so, because Austin, he's had an improved year, 4 touchdowns, I think over 300, almost 400 yards on the year. So Austin has been a hell of a plus for the Steelers at wide receiver too. He stepped up big time, and I hope to see more of that. I really do.
So I did forget about Calvin Austin, actually, but that brings me to another question, because you're probably going to have a low pick in the first round of the draft, because you guys usually do.
Mm-hmm.
Although you did trade up and selected Devin Bush, which ironically he now plays.
Yeah, good old Devin Bush. As a matter of fact, quick question. Since he stepped in for the Joker, how do you feel about his play as a Brown in general? Because how he was as a Steeler, he was just a pain to watch and just very frustrating. But have you seen any improvement from his play as a Brown for you guys?
First of all, it's ironic that he plays for us now, and we're playing you in Pittsburgh this week.
Yeah.
So I like that. But to answer your question, he's made impacts on the field at times, but I feel like the inconsistency was part of Steelers' frustrations with him, and I'm kind of having the same experience with him here in Cleveland. So, do I like him? Sure, I guess that's the best way to put it. Question mark. But my question was going to be, do you think there's a chance you guys draft a wide receiver in the first round of this year's draft?
It's definitely a huge possibility. Again, Austin has stepped up as a wide receiver too. George Pickens is for sure the number 1, and I know he's going to be going into contract talks this upcoming offseason. And I'm sure the Steelers are going to want to keep him long term because despite his behavioral issues here and there and whatnot, his attitude, whatnot, like the environment that he has with Russ and Fields at quarterback, Tomlin as a head coach, I feel like he's in the right area to get better at that. And just, when it comes to receivers like that, Tomlin just knows how to handle it and keep them at bay for the most part. Looking at the Deontay Johnson situation just yesterday with what Baltimore's doing with him and how they're dealing with the situation. It's just I feel like Pickens and the talent, despite his behavioral issues, so to speak, is undeniable, and I don't think the Steelers are going to want to move on from that. Drafting a receiver is definitely up in the air, but Dan, I believe he's in the chat right now. Shout out to my brother. He has been preaching and basically pounding the table when it comes to a free agent wish list. The number one guy on his bucket list is T. Higgins of Cincinnati because he feels just signing a wide receiver would just take the void of having to draft one, because when you look at the past recent wide receivers the Steelers have drafted, guys like Chase Claypool and Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, guys like that, they made their mark here and there, they made plays here and there, but it wasn't at a consistent rate, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And just
exactly.
The issues they had and how they behaved and childlike that they were, the Steelers didn't want to deal with that, and
No.
T. Higgins, he's proven, he's credible, he's a hell of a talent, and he's a guy that can just come in day one and just fill that void. And looking at what the Steelers were doing throughout the whole offseason, because all about the Brandon Ayuk situation, like he was in talks with the Browns and the Steelers and whatnot.
Yep.
So, and like there was constant talks with the Steelers about scorching the earth for a wide receiver until they had to settle for Mike Williams. It's like if they were that aggressive for a full offseason at trying to trade for a wide receiver after trading away Deontay, I feel like, and Dan probably feels like it would just make the most sense on just signing a wide receiver, considering as of now how stacked it appears to be. The wide receiver free agency market, just sign a guy, a proven guy, a young guy at that, in T. Higgins. Just fill that void, and you would have George Pickens and T. Higgins as the number one, number two wide receiver, and potentially bringing back Russell Wilson and or Justin Fields at quarterback. I mean, like, that is just a hot and fired offense right there, and potentially bringing back Najee and Warren. Like that would just be a threatening offense just on paper alone. Like that would be something to be excited about for the offseason.
Plus, not only would you be helping yourself, you'd be hurting Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Which I think we have a Bengals fan in the chat, because Ohio Game Talk, he says, "Sup, Unger and Rob. I hate both of your teams, but love both of y'all." So, thanks for being in the chat. So, that would be interesting to see T. Higgins in the black and gold. But you mentioned it, like, I think the biggest question with the Steelers is the quarterbacks. I hate to keep bringing it up, but it's like my biggest, like, I guess, question mark, if you will, surrounding them. Like, we don't know if Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are going to be back. So, is there a possibility that maybe in round 2 or round 3, if there's a quarterback you guys really like, do you possibly consider drafting one?
That's definitely a huge possibility, I would say. I think that really depends. Because I feel with how Russ is playing right now and just his attitude, his leadership, his relationship, how it's building with Mike Tomlin, I feel like that Tomlin and Russ don't really want to separate away from that. I feel like that Russ would 100% want to stay in Pittsburgh. I mean, like, he was real quick to sign with the Steelers after his, what was it, like a 6-hour interview that he had with Tomlin that was reported. Like, they were just talking football and life and whatnot, and that's how the bond really came about, why Russ came here. So I feel like, and just how he's playing and the vibe with the team, I think he's going to want to stay. I think the question mark for me, because I have no doubt Russ is going to come back from Pittsburgh, and I'm totally up for it as long as his play is up to par.
Right.
The
I'm
question
not
mark.
saying Russ should leave Pittsburgh.
Oh
That's
yeah,
not.
yeah, I hear you. I hear you. But I think the question mark is would Fields want to come back, because I know that he's a competitor. He's a guy that wants to compete. He wants to challenge himself, and he's a guy that has showcased that he's still starter worthy within the NFL. There's no doubt about that, in my opinion. It may not be at a consistent rate, but I feel Fields can definitely aid in a team, whether it's in Pittsburgh or another team. Because if Russ stays with Pittsburgh after this season, I don't know if Fields is going to want to stay at Pittsburgh, especially if there's several other quarterback openings, like the Raiders or like the Giants. Just quick examples right there. Open quarterback battles
Or
there.
maybe Tennessee.
Or Tennessee, absolutely. There's teams out there, that could use a guy like Fields and his ability to make plays. Um, but
I do like how you guys have continued to use Fields since Russ has taken over. Like, you'll still put packages together where it's Fields on, well, the field, no pun intended there.
yeah.
And it's so funny. Like, I went back and watched highlights of that Cincinnati game. And late in the game, Justin Fields comes out, and it's like, he's going to tuck and run. And yet Cincinnati somehow was not prepared for that. I'm like, I even knew that was happening.
Yeah, I mean, I was just well prepared for Fields to take the ball. It's just Cincinnati fell for it. They were just ill prepared for Fields there, and I'm a fan of the Fields packages and his usage. I just hope that they don't over abuse it and just they don't overuse it, and they don't make it like stale and overly predictable, if you know what I mean. But
Yeah, and
and
I expect them to use that package once or twice against the Browns on Sunday.
I mean, they did 2 weeks ago, with that, they did a couple rush plays with Fields, and he even threw that deep ball in that 3rd and 4. And it's like Fields, he's not, getting starter playing time, but he's getting snaps here and there. But I feel, again, going back to the offseason, um, he's a guy that's going to want to compete and get more snaps and more playing time. But maybe with the atmosphere and what he has with coaching, because he's preached about, the difference in coaching from Chicago to Pittsburgh, it's essentially night and day for him.
Well,
And
considering how unstable the situation was in Chicago, I can understand that.
And maybe he doesn't want to step away from that. I don't know. Like if he doesn't, then if the Steelers can manage to bring Fields and Russ back, that is an A plus plus in my opinion.
Oh, I agree. And I wish I could say it's a similar situation here in Cleveland, but all indications are number 4 is going to be the starting quarterback when he returns to being healthy next season. I've heard that the Browns might want to draft a quarterback to create competition for him. We'll see if Jameis is back. But again, I think that's part of our problem is like the fans got so into Flacco
Mm-hmm.
at the end of last year that ownership was like, well, we don't want Flacco to stick around, and that's why they allowed him to go to Indianapolis.
And that's weird. Not to cut you off, but that's weird because I think Flacco stated that he wanted to stay in Cleveland
He did.
after his time there, and
Yeah,
I
he
think,
did.
and obviously he left, and I think Winston's kind of stating the same thing. And my question to you here is, do you think Winston sticks around? Do you think this is kind of like a Joe Flacco similar situation, or do you think that they just sign another guy?
So this is where I was going with this, so I'm glad you asked this. Like, I think the reason they allowed Flacco to go is because they didn't want Deshaun, looking over his shoulder and being like, well, if I play bad, are the fans going to turn on me? Am I going to be taken off the field in favor of Flacco?
Right.
And I feel like it could be heading in that direction with Jameis if he has let's say he has a strong finish to the year, like he beats Kansas City next week, maybe he beats Cincinnati the week after that, and beats Miami, which I think all 3 of those are possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, and gets us to 6, what would that be, 6-11? Like, that's not a great season, but I wouldn't say that's terrible. So if you have a full season of Jameis, there could be improvement there. But then again, like the ownership is going to say, we don't want Deshaun looking over his shoulder and being like, well, if I play bad, are the fans going to turn on me? Which I'm sorry, we already have.
Yeah.
And if I play bad, am I going to be yanked off the field in favor of Jameis or Joe Flacco going back to last year or whoever? Does that kind of answer your question?
I mean, it does. Again, you mentioned the possibility of drafting one. I don't know how high the Browns would draft a quarterback. I would have to imagine it's very high if they really want like a high pedigree or a high caliber quarterback play. Because I mean, like, there's no denying that Watson is just not it. It's just the guaranteed money that is basically the ball and chain that you're stuck with Watson right there. You're basically handcuffed with him. You have no choice. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, because we gave him that horrible 5-year, $230 million fully guaranteed. So it's like we are stuck with him, and if we try to cut him, we're going to be hit with a huge amount of dead cap,
Mm-hmm.
which is what the Broncos are dealing with in terms of Russell Wilson. Because again, you guys basically got him for free.
Mm-hmm.
So
Now, another question here is
sure.
when it comes to free agency and the quarterbacks,
Mm-hmm.
just to have, I would suppose a proven starter, just to have behind Watson, when the inevitable happens. Do you think the Browns overpay at the quarterback position once again just to bring a guy in because they need a better player at that position?
I think it really depends on who who it is they're bringing in. Um, I don't know if there's going to be a quarterback in free agency that I'm like, oh yeah, we need to go get that guy to create competition for Deshaun. Like, I I I don't know what free agent quarterbacks there are that would create that kind of buzz, if you will.
I will throw one name out there because I don't see him sticking around because they did draft a rookie quarterback who's going to be recovering from injury next year. Um, do you do you see Sam Darnold becoming a Brown next year?
I mean, they did just sign J.J. McCarthy, or I'm sorry, not J.J. They drafted J.J. I meant
Hmm.
they they signed Daniel Jones. There we go. Um, you knew what I meant,
Of
but
course.
eh, yeah, I could see it. I don't know if he's gonna want to leave Minnesota though, based off the relative success he's having this season. Kind of like Justin Fields with Pittsburgh, where
Hmm.
so it's kind of comparable in that sense. Do is there a possibility of it? Yeah. Would I say it's likely though? No.
Yeah, and I only asked that because of the quarterback market. Teams could be willing to pay, Boku bucks just to get this guy in there because of the capabilities that they did show. And, just maybe the change of scenery, maybe the players want to bet on themselves and showcase, hey, like my career did uh take a turn for the best. It did revive to a degree, like I showcase something. I'm a gamble on myself. I'm gonna take this contract and I'm gonna try to do the best that I can for this new team that I'm with. That's why I bring it up.
No, that's a fair thing. Like we saw how Green Bay traded for Malik Willis, and everybody was like, "What?" And
Hmm.
he came in and won them a few games, and they have a huge opportunity tonight against the Detroit Lions on Thursday Night Football um, to make a big statement. So you never know. Like, is San Francisco going to pay the big bucks for Brock Purdy? I'm not sure. Like, could he be realistically be an option? I would say probably not, but it doesn't hurt to throw the name out there.
What, Brock Purdy?
Yeah.
I can't see that happening based off what they dealt with at quarterback with Garoppolo and Trey Lance, only for Mr. Irrelevant to be the guy for them. They basically found a diamond in the rough, so to speak, and I feel San Francisco wouldn't really want to move on from that. But crazier things have happened in the NFL, and we'll see how that goes for San Francisco because their Super Bowl window's closing. They're having a very injury riddled season, and next year, they're going to want to try to make that one last stretch for the Super Bowl because they have a lot of people under contract. Plus, Purdy's going to be coming up, so we'll see what that whole situation is for them down there.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think we'll start finishing up because we've been going for over an hour now. And Grandizer kind of took the words right out of my mouth. In terms of score predictions, I got the Steelers. I think I said 24-17 last time we played you in favor of Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say the Steelers win again. I'm going to say the Steelers win, split the series. I'll say Pittsburgh wins a little bit of a high-scoring game. I'll say 27-23.
Okay. All right. See, when it comes to the Steelers, the Bengals game last week, that was a rarity for the Steelers to really have a shootout with a division rival. Because
Sure.
I've stated on my channel with Dan that there is nothing else like AFC North football. It's mostly defensive, but it's always highly competitive, highly intense, highly physical, and just basically down to the wire, if you know what I mean. Like
Yes.
AFC North football is the best football in all the NFL.
Put your hard hat on and get ready.
Exactly. And I don't see this really being a shootout. It could because, like the Broncos and Browns, that one really surprised me. I didn't expect that to be as high scoring as it was. But
Oh, I agree with you.
see, because the Browns, they won 24-19 against the Steelers, and that was defensive for the most part. I can kind of see a similar game. Very defensive, again, down to the wire, AFC North football. But no, I'm going to go with the Steelers to get the win here. I think if I had to do a score prediction, I would say I think it's going to be close because it's AFC North football. And the Browns, the most recent amount of games have been very close when it comes to the Steelers and Browns compared to the earlier days. I would say 26-21.
Okay. By the way, Nance and Romo are going to be on the call for this game.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Got to hear Tony Romo all day, huh?
Yep.
All right.
I wasn't expecting Nance and Romo to be on the call for this game, considering we're 3-9 and you're 9-3, but whatever. According to Grandizer, the weather forecast calls for 45 degrees, chance of rain showers, winds at 14 miles per hour. So we'll see how that affects things, but
I know it won't be the what they call it, the snow globe game or something.
Yeah.
In Cleveland. So it won't be like that, and that was a sight to see. I will say that, but the weather, it could come into play for either team again, but no, it's going to be a good game for sure. Despite the weather and whatnot, at Heinz Field in Pittsburgh, it's going to be intense. It's going to be an intense game.
Yes. It is snowing like crazy here in Cleveland right now.
Oh, you getting snow down there too?
Yep. I actually had school closed today. That's why I was able to work it out to do this collab with you.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So it worked out. And I have to work the Cavs game tonight against Denver, so that'll be fun.
Okay.
But it's always fun talking with you and your brother. I love talking Browns Steelers with you. By the way, I forgot to mention this. I do have a bit of Steelers memorabilia. There you go.
Okay. That's pretty cool.
And I got a little Steelers helmet right there.
That's pretty awesome there, yeah.
Browns fans will hate it that I say this, but I still want to get myself a terrible towel just as a piece of memorabilia. Because I like to collect that type of stuff. But
yeah, of course.
Yeah. So that's going to do it for today's episode of the SportsRoom Talk Show. Rob, always appreciate it. And if you guys are doing a live stream on Sunday, I'll be in the live chat. So.
Yeah, we will be doing a live watch along for that game, live reactions for that. We'll be live around 12:30
Okay.
p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so that'll be on the channel at Steel Twins for you guys. But Max, always a good time to come on the channel. Always a good time to collab and talk to you about Steelers Browns and just how the history is about and how it's been and where the teams are at about now, and even looking down the road in the off season at the future of Steelers and Browns, because it's always a legendary rivalry and a highly competitive matchup between these two teams. So thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I appreciate you working with me and my brother with our etchy schedule. But always fun to get on here. So thanks for having me, man.
Yep, and shout out to your brother. And now, Kansas City, you are on the clock. I need to keep my perfect record intact.